Hey there. Welcome to our AP Legal Zone podcast, brought to you by AP Lawyers. We are your top fix for all weekly law updates, including family, immigration, wills, and estates law. Just a friendly reminder, we are not your lawyers, and everything contained in this podcast is for entertainment purposes only and not to be construed as legal advice. Be sure to subscribe to our podcast so you can stay connected with any updates and get notified about our new episodes.
Hello, I'm Angela Princewill.
And I'm Sherine Abdi.
And scrolling through the web, we stumbled, I guess, on an article online titled, "Here's Why You and Your Ex Broke Up." And just really mindless through it, obviously, because, we had to take a mental health break. We thought, well, we're like, wow, these reasons really just kind of match the same reasons why people's family law matters don't settle. So anyway, we decided we're going to copy it and we're going to present to you, here's why your family matter isn't settling. Cool?
Yeah.
Okay, so the first one was contempt. And the idea behind number one is if you treated the other person like you were better or you felt disgust towards the other person, that's likely a big part of why you broke up. And don't you see that with our matters?
If that was the case in your relationship, you feel like even in settling, you're giving the other side power in something. So you might be a little more stringent on a position.
And I feel like some people just feel, I don't know, superior. They feel like or if it's the person that feels like they've been put down, then now all of a sudden they're trying to
establish that
so
power that was taken, or just kind of be on an equal footing. Then it can make the dynamic from your relationship to now your family law matter being a little more
complicated.
Difficult. Yeah.
And the second reason is cheating. Oh my God, cheating is
popular one.
Yes,
I would say
it's hard, and I get it. It's even what I find is it's even harder when the person who cheats is the one who wants out of the relationship. So now you have the other person that feels like a victim, rightly or wrongly. But now they have to make all these decisions about selling their home, even giving you money and all of that, when from their perspective, they did nothing wrong.
Yeah, I think that's the hard part is if you feel like, as a result of the other party, that's the reason for the breakdown of the relationship, then you might not really understand why. I guess you have to concede on certain things or a legal entitlement to certain things. So it can make it a little more difficult.
What do you mean by they have to concede on certain things?
Not by concede, I would say, but let's say, let's just say, John cheated on Jane. And John is entitled to, an equalization payment from Jane. But Jane has a hard time making that payment because as a result of John is the reason why their marriage is breaking down. So just things like that, it's hard.
Why would she have a problem making that payment? Is it like there's no money within the family?
No, it's not that it's not it's that legally that's what should happen, but for her emotionally,
okay.
that cheating is they can't conceptualize sometimes why it's fair for someone else to be benefiting from a breakdown of the relationship.
Gotcha.
When it was a result of them, the reason why the marriage couldn't work.
Yeah, so we sound very insensitive a lot of times when we say, it doesn't matter. And one person's like, well, she did this. I never asked for this. And it breaks my heart to even, deal with my clients that are even we're willing to work on the relationship. So it's like she cheated, but I take my vows very seriously. And I was going to work on it with her. And she said no. So it's like, I didn't cheat, and now I want to work it out. She doesn't want to work it out, or he doesn't want to work it out. It's hard. So anyway, when you have that kind of dynamic, I just ask that the other party, be a little bit more patient, because maybe just give someone a little bit more time. But it's one of those factors that can really prevent your family law matter from settling as quickly. And sometimes just a little bit of time to allow the other party process it is better than, us, while we know we can, jump into litigation and get results faster and get things moving. That's also a slow process in and of itself, just by virtue of the system. So it's a reason why your matter isn't settling, and be mindful of it if you're, the person that, whichever side of things you're on. But I would just say, if you're the person that did the cheating, maybe just give the other side a little bit of time. And the party that was cheated on, like, you don't want this process to drag on as long. If the relationship is going to end, you might as well just transition to hopefully a better phase of your life quicker. So, substance use and abuse is another reason why you may have broken up with someone. Do we need to even say how this can affect settlement? Like, if you're under the influence of something and sending your lawyer a million emails every night, like the confusion. I know you've spoken about this before, Sherine, in a previous podcast, about like the conflicting instructions that we get, right? So if you're, I don't know, if you're drunk and you sent an email at 5 when you were semi sober, and then now it's like you sent 200 more emails while you were drunk. Like, we can't do anything, right?
It's difficult to get, I mean, obviously concrete instructions in that manner, but it's difficult for both the other side and for your lawyer, if you have one, to really kind of resolve your issues, because there's clearly an impediment.
Yeah.
But so yeah, and even if the other side is, if you're dealing with the same thing on the other side, it is troubling, because not just because the circumstances can change, but if there's children involved, then resolving your issues while there's an ongoing substance
abuse issue,
yes, it's definitely going to be an issue.
Exactly. So yeah, so where there's substance abuse issues, it might be the reason why you broke up, and it could also be a reason why your matter isn't settling. So the other reason was lying.
Most common.
This is so common. Like, even just as yesterday, I had a 4-way meeting, and it was a very productive meeting, but both lawyers had to really control our clients, because each one thinks the other is lying. And like, frankly, many times we were like, we really don't care, because the facts you guys are trying to get straight really have no bearing on the legal issues anyway. But I know from a personal perspective, like, they couldn't just move on with those
100%,
lies, right?
Especially like I see, like even recently, I had received some pleadings, and my client was so incredibly baffled by, I guess, the sheer amount of misinformation. And she was hyper fixated on, like saying every single sentence was incorrect. And I told her I really had to focus her in and just talk about the issues that are actually of substance. But
Yeah.
it is hard, because, I mean, if things were, on the court record that, that I was saying certain things, like, it's I get it. Like, from an emotional standpoint, I get it. But that's where it's imperative that you have someone kind of ground you in really understanding, like, what is actually something that we need to address. And like, the lies, like, while it's unfortunate, they don't really go to any
sometimes they don't go. If it's something that does, then you would usually pick up on it and deal with that, right? But if it's like you came back every day at 5 p.m., but you actually did come back at 4 p.m., like, he's lying again, we know, but, or she's lying. And
so don't get so hyper fixated on proving every single lie is wrong, or every single thing is not the truth. That's what's going to be a problem. It's definitely going to drag out your family law matter from settling.
And even judges know. So that's another thing that I often see. So when we draft applications and then we receive an answer, and then there's lies in it, and now the client is asking me to file a reply. If it's not a lie that goes to an actual legal issue, I would usually tell them to save themselves the cost, and just the cost of having to do that, or putting in a reply just to dispute every single lie is not worth it. The judges already
not appropriate.
They already know that you're in this process. They can assume that one person's lying, so don't worry about it. And I know that one way that I sometimes deal with this, just because putting myself in my client's shoes, I know I would feel awful knowing that there's lies out there. Like, I can understand as a lawyer, but I'm sure if I were facing the same situation, I might not be this objective. That's why everyone needs a lawyer to keep you grounded. But I mean, what I would usually say is something along the lines of, we're not speaking to, the issue specific. I mean, like, we make a general statement like much of this affidavit is fabricated and is untrue. However, it's not appropriate for us to speak to each one at a time, and we do not admit any of it. Something very general terms like that.
I also follow that like approach because it kind of shuts down everything by being so broad and saying, you know what, all of these are like
Or you can even pick
and they have
paragraph
no
numbers.
Separation. So I mean, I could also ask for that portion to be stricken, but
but again, it delays your matter. If it's not
exactly.
necessary, let's move past it. So, but we feel you. We understand. It's annoying.
The
it's
judges
annoying.
know it's a he said, she said. Like,
Yes,
they get it.
They do.
They're fact finders. They're going to sift through the material when they need to.
And if it does get to a trial, and if it is material, then you can prove him to be, or prove her to be, the liar that he or she is. But understand that a lot of times, like, we don't even get that far for status. The credibility of it, like, for some people, they want to prove right from the get-go that this person's credibility is at stake. But even if we prove to the judge that that other side is a liar, it doesn't change the amount of support you have to pay. It doesn't change
parenting time.
It doesn't change equalization. So why am I going through the trouble of proving the liar that they are, right? So again, when we say these things, it's really just to help you move your matter along, because we know that there's a better life out there for you, and we just want to transition you through this process as painlessly as possible.
100%.
Yeah. The other reason why your ex broke up with you, financial issues. I mean, hey, it could be overspending, being too frugal. It goes either way, right? I mean, it's easy to see for overspenders, I guess, but honestly, there's times that some people are frustrated that the other side is just too frugal with money.
Yeah, especially when it comes to, I guess, them and their support, and then the like meeting basic needs.
Yeah. So and then even I think another, when it comes to the financial issues, I just want to mention that now that you're separating, first, financial reasons is a huge part of why couples separate. Financial pressures that manifest in all kinds of different ways. But in the context of a separation as well, some people just can't conceptualize that their ex no longer has to do certain things for them, right? So now they're thinking, well, why is he taking the home? I have the kids and I need the home for the kids, and he should pay the mortgage and pay for groceries and pay.
Yeah, but like, he was paying my car insurance, or my cell phone. Like, why can't he still do that?
And which he could, from the goodness of his heart, if he wanted. But now there's no legal obligation for he or she to continue to do that. And I find that sometimes it's shocking for people, and they can't move past that. And we're showing them the numbers, but it's not enough, right, to meet their basic expenses. And in some cases, legitimately, the other side can afford to give them extra funds, but they choose not to. But they don't have to, I guess.
Yeah, and from like a different perspective of financial issues, like, oftentimes people may be fixated on past financial issues that they've had, that they want to focus on, although sometimes, for the most part, they're actually quite irrelevant. So things like that, happened 10 years before you separated. No one's gonna care.
You have that's a very good perspective, actually. Sometimes, this manifested itself at my meeting yesterday as well, where it was at one point, it was like, well, when we were married, he did this, that, and that, and why did he use? It was rent, to be specific. He collected rent for several years, and he never gave me any of it. And I'm like, I understand, but what you guys do during the marriage isn't really a concern now from a legal perspective. It might be the reason why you're here. You didn't like how we handled your finances, but we're not going to go back and ask him to reimburse you for all the rent that you never got.
Yeah, there's also no entitlement to something like that.
So it's, if we fixed on that, I mean, and thankfully this was my client, so I was able to kind of get movement on that and say it's really not relevant at this point. But even going forward, so we get to the issue of the matrimonial home and selling the home versus the other side buying my client out. And my client was okay with the buyout, but her concern became, well, what if he rents out the home? I know that's what he's going to do. He's just going to rent out most of the home, and he would sell it eventually. And I'm like, I know.
But it's also not.
It's not your concern anymore.
Yeah, you can't manage things to that perspective. Like but that's also a good consideration as to why maybe things are taking longer to settle. So be very mindful that, while I'm not trying to diminish the importance of what happened during your relationship, but we're only trying to strengthen your position going forward. And
Yes.
I guess hyperfixating on things that are quite irrelevant from a legal perspective, then it wouldn't be really too helpful. So
yeah, I agree. Yeah, so the other reason why he broke up with you, or does it even say he said, here's why your ex broke up. Okay, so just so hey, scratch that. Okay, it's gender neutral. So there's how your ex broke up for you. Poor communication was the next one. So I mean, hey, if you were that, I mean, there are some great communicators in this person. It's always shocking.
It's always shocking to me when there's one great communicator and the other party is not. But then it's always very shocking to me when they're both
really great. Then because most times if they're not great, then it's like, okay, I understand
involvement.
Yes, or even I understand why the relationship is even broken up. But when they're like both like articulate, they can, they're co-parenting well, they just want to end things amicably. Sometimes I hold my breath. I'm like, is somebody not really processing what's happening properly? But no, but I have had many cases where people have been able to communicate well. They can accept, what is. They don't necessarily always agree, but they can keep things respectful and simple. And I can tell you that those cases just are in and out. They don't spend a lot of time in our hands, and it's great that people can move on to, bigger, better things with their lives.
Yeah, so if you have like a partner that's not communicative, that's going to be a problem in maybe resolving your issues. Even if you're the person who doesn't like to communicate why you believe you're entitled to X versus like things like that could prolong your matter because you're not really, again, you're not communicating properly. So
yeah.
Yeah.
The other reason is anger issues. So, and this is talking about losing your temper, small arguments escalating. This one just goes not even this goes even not beyond just settling your matter. Especially if you have children together, this is one you really want to watch for if you're the person with the anger issues. And I know that it's obviously hard to self-diagnose yourself with anger issues, but we all need to reflect, right? Sometimes, because this is, if you have anger issues, it would prevent your matter from settling, and it would make co-parenting so difficult, even so much so that you may lose parenting rights that you otherwise could have had. So
anger issues, and honestly, even if you have a reason to be angry, no one's disputing that, but it's the way in which you conduct your behavior and that anger. So you always want to be careful, because I've even had like recently, a party agreed, then got angry, and then didn't agree, and then was fine, and then again got angry. So like these things just prolong your matter. So you want to be mindful that your emotions do have a big role to play.
Yeah.
So you may want to just consider that.
Yeah. And the other reason, social media addiction. Okay, I mean, that might be the reason why someone would break up with you, but in the context of why your family matter, what social media addiction could do when it comes to settling your family law matter is, well, what's a classic example? Someone goes and posts something silly about the other side on social media. Now we've gone from what should have been an otherwise easy process to now us trying to make tort claims and by tort I mean civil wrongs. Now we're saying you invaded their privacy. We're asking for damages. Like, some people are so out there with their relationship that it could present an impediment for settling for sure.
Of course, and if you're out there, saying very negative things
exactly
on social media, it's not helping the other person feel comfortable with the settlement, and they also would be very upset. So, and the courts don't like it. So
and even
refrain.
On the flip side too, this so-called like the perfect parent on social media that's always posting things. Like I had a client that was, used to be so upset because the partner would always like post things on social media with the kid and things like that. When there was no involvement outside of social media, right? So it's almost like, and I saw that manifest in the form of my client being difficult to agree to things as simple as, just first day of school pictures, for example, because it's like, well, this gets posted on social media, but they didn't get to do anything. Why do I have to do that? So
That's interesting.
yeah, it was, but I had to, ground my client and in understanding that it's really not your role. But it was interesting to see social media in a what would otherwise be a positive sense kind of be an impediment to settling like what would be ordinarily easy issues. And then okay, the next reason is because you have a disheveled or unclean appearance. I don't know if there's any.
I don't know
This
if
one
that's
has
really a
nothing to
problem.
do
Yeah,
with
maybe
settling
we'll
your
just
case.
skip that one. Lack of trust.
There's almost always a lack of trust,
Of course,
though.
especially like, I mean, to some level. I mean, like there are times where it's just, hey, you're amicably separated. It's often not.
Yes.
It's often not like that. But yeah, lack of trust could lead to, even when signing final documents, like people are hesitant just because they don't trust their other person.
No, people even people read the wrong things in. So, and I know, and I get, because I've done this for so long, so now I get it, and I'm like, I know you don't trust this person, and you're trying to calculate 10 steps ahead what you think you're going to do. First off, that's like you can almost never accurately calculate how every possible scenario in your matter is going to play out. So by saying, well, if I give him child support, then he might come for this. Yeah, maybe he would, maybe he wouldn't. Like, you don't know. But we understand that it's that lack of trust. But at some point, you just have to relax and trust that we will deal with whatever obstacle arises at that point, because a lot of times they don't.
Yeah, like even like when reading an agreement, like someone who has a lack of trust can read into, like a very standard provision in an agreement and say, oh, it's in here because of, and I'm like, no, I'll explain to you, but this is very common, it's very standard, and this is what just needs to go into the agreement. And then I think, so lack of trust can definitely prolong a matter.
Yeah, so for some, as we said earlier, we do recognize that there's a lack of, well, we don't trust your ex on your behalf, okay? We don't. So, but there's just a certain limit, that there's a certain threshold where it just really becomes an impediment for you. But don't think that we're out there like necessarily trusting them. No need to say anything. We don't trust them, okay?
Yeah,
so the other was unspoken expectations. Unspoken expectations. Is that ever a reason why a family law matter wouldn't settle?
I think so, because I feel like when another party, like they have maybe like an expectation as to how things should be, but then their partner doesn't agree, and then they can't kind of conceptualize why it can't be their way, like why they expected it. And I think having unreasonable expectations, or just sometimes even like expectations, are kind of difficult itself, because when they're not met, it's hard to conceptualize why, and why it can't be the way that you intend for it to be.
Yeah, no, okay, that's true. Yeah. That's an interesting one. You're right, because if you're expecting something and it's not, I mean, in my mind, I'm just thinking about, maybe clients that don't understand why the one party wouldn't move out. Like, he or she could go stay with their parents while I stay in the home, for example.
Yeah, or even
That's a very common
like,
expectation,
household
right?
contents. Like, I bought this. Like he told me I could have this. Like, why can't I have it now? And like, even when we
but even the unspoken one, some people just feel like, because I've always liked that mattress in the bedroom, and she never slept, she always slept on the couch, I should keep. Why does she want the bed? But well, now she does. It is. I mean, there's no answer to that one. So, anyway, don't get stuck on these unspoken expectations, and even spoken expectations. If the cost is not worth the benefit, let's not drag on your family law matter for things like that. Different visions. And this article was talking in the terms of, one person wanting a baby, or one person wanting to get married, and if the couple don't share that vision, it could be a reason for breakups. But even when they've broken up, one party
might want to think not one's paying spousal support, but the other one definitely wants spousal
Or
support.
even with their babies, one person thinks the babies should eat, like, I don't know,
Like-
organic foods, and the other one's like, I don't care, they can eat whatever, eat chips all day. Like,
Yeah,
it's a
watch
different
TV.
vision.
I think I had like a client regulate how much like the TV and like they can watch during the summer, and my client was like, well, I don't care, like they're kids, like they go outside, they're active, and then they can go inside and watch TV.
Yeah, so that's a different different
Yeah,
visions of
just-
how they want to raise their children, right? So if, and this is one where I'll just say, I'm not saying necessarily to let go of everything, because there's I mean, I guess parenting is at the core of our being as parents and things like that. There's things that really matter a lot. So if your vision of how your child should be raised is very important to you, I mean, I guess we could pick our battles in some sense in that way. I don't know. It will delay your matter settling. That's what we're not saying is
especially
right
how
or
far
wrong.
apart, and if you're very
Yeah.
I would like very particular. I would say if you have an exact vision of how you want things to play out, I mean, we might have to manage our expectations in that regard, just because sometimes there's only so many things you can actually dictate.
You know what's interesting? Like the new Divorce Act now has made it very clear that the parents with whom the children are with on a day-to-day can just like make those decisions.
Exactly.
And so that's going to be helpful, because in the past we've had clients, and been on both sides of this issue, we've had situations where a parent wants to kind of dictate what happens, like what meals they eat and things like that. So with these new changes to the Divorce Act and the Children's Law Reform Act, now day-to-day decisions are going to be made by the parent with whom they are. And if you have a very fixed vision on how you want your child to be raised, well, we'll try to get the cooperation of the other side. We will try to sell it to them if it's in the child's best interest, but just understand that it might slow down the settling of your matter ultimately, right? So growing apart is another reason why you guys might have broken up. So, well, I don't know.
Because sometimes like you don't want the relationship to end, so you might want to delay. So like that might be intentional, or sometimes it's more of an emotional, like not letting go, like not wanting things to settle, because ultimately that you and your partner are not going to be together anymore, and things are going to kind of be set in stone. Well, nothing's really ever set in stone. But it makes sense. So if you are having kind of issues letting go, like that's kind of where we need to like stop and assess, so that way we're understanding where to take your file.
And the other is lack of compatibility. So one person has different political views, and I don't know, different sense of humor, different spending habits, and this is almost every case that we have in some form or another. But it doesn't, I mean, your differences can be your strength. Okay, I'm trying. Yeah, it can be your strength.
But for maybe like I could see it being an issue when you're co-parenting with someone. So like those differences maybe needing to be kind of buckled down. But yeah, it's very common. Like I mean, you're here because you're clearly not compatible anymore in that regard. Well, I would assume.
Yeah, we would assume so. Yeah, but even in terms of it also comes up with little things for people without kids, for example. So let's say they're trying to sell a home. One person, might be more of an investor, and they want to put in, upgrades to the home so they can get more. Another person is like, no, I don't want to do that with you. Like, I just want to move on. Well, we will try to find a fair and reasonable midpoint for you. But if we get fixated on respective positions, then it's just going to drag on the matter. And again, in case we haven't made that clear enough, our goal is to help you settle as quickly and as painlessly as possible. these issues all come up for in everyone's matters, but we just want to, I guess, help you be a little bit more mindful in what might be happening in your case. Boredom. Oh my God. So boredom might be the reason why you broke up. I don't even know.
I don't know if that's really applicable.
Yeah, that does not apply to us. There's never any boredom. If there's boredom, then we've probably settled your matter and you've moved on.
Jealousy.
Oh, that's
yes,
a huge one.
I can see that for sure.
Jealousy is a huge reason why a lot of our matters don't settle. Nothing brings back a matter for emotion to change like the ex. Now one of the partners now having a new girlfriend or a new boyfriend. That just, God forbid it happens during the initial stages of separation. It's almost, then the case almost never settles. I'm usually so proud when I see people saying, oh yeah, that's her boyfriend and this person, and everyone's just so fine with it and they're moving on with with life, because
new partners,
drafting their agreement. Even people without children, once one person looks like they're talking to someone else, it's almost like it just has such a major effect on settlement talks. Mm-hmm. Now, all of a sudden, the amount of support that might have been agreed to is no longer appropriate. Or one person is not in a hurry to sell the home. Or maybe the flip side, maybe now the other person now is in a relationship and they were fine, maybe continuing to live separate and apart in the same home, but now they want the home sold next week so they could take the money and go invest with their new partner.
And that would be an impediment if you're a jealous person. Yeah. I think we're all kind of innately a little jealous.
Yeah,
like, I'm not even gonna lie, but it's kind of, like I could see that.
I mean, I don't know if it's either here nor there. I don't think. I mean, except you're like, I don't know, psycho jealous. I don't really think that.
But jealousy sometimes.
I don't think it's a bad thing.
But it makes you hesitant about settling. So
yes,
if you're
that's where it's a problem.
This comes down to your emotions, right? Like if you're like not letting go, if you're jealous, let's say your partner is moving on, and you obviously don't want that, you may make things a little more difficult for them.
Yes,
and vice versa. If you're the jealous person, you don't want your partner to go live happily ever after with somebody else, and it may even just be jealous that maybe they even got a promotion, or they have plans to move, to another house, and they've already kind of conceptualized like
life without
after like a separation.
Oh yeah, that's a good one, I'm sure, because do you know how many times people are like, I can't believe how quickly she's moved on, and they're really not talking about another relationship. They're talking about the fact that the other person has gotten a new home or has
changed their forwarding address.
We've barely separated and they've gotten pre-approval for another mortgage. Like, we haven't, like, how did this happen, right?
Yeah.
So
it's like sometimes just taking that time to just really understand how you're feeling, and sometimes even like therapy is useful.
I think so. I think it's helpful.
If your emotions with anger issues, jealousy, all of those things, like that's where sometimes maybe therapy before kind of dealing with the substantive issues may be more viable, or while you're dealing with the issues.
I agree, because if you can speak with a mental health professional in any capacity to help you through these matters, it really would, I find that, like, with I keep going back to collaborative processes, but with collaborative family law matters, because a lot of times we involve family professionals, they're usually the therapists, the social workers, and things like that. I think it's very helpful.
Oh, 100%. That's like the biggest benefit, I think, to collaborative.
And some people, the party that's not jealous, so the other side that maybe is the one that's moved on quicker than the other, might be wondering, well, what's going on? Like, why is this so slow? But you have to understand that sometimes another party just needs a little bit more time, and I keep coming back to that, being patient, sometimes just a little bit, because the alternative being litigation, you may not still move things as quickly if this one person could just still be a headache regardless of what process you're using. So anyway, hopefully you're the person that's a little bit jealous, and you can realize that this isn't helping your family law matters settle. If the relationship is over, it's over. Let's deal with the issues and move on.
100%.
So emotional neglect.
I think that kind of like tags on to like the jealousy, the anger, the emotional aspect.
That's true. So what would say about emotional neglect, I guess, is just speak to your therapist. If you don't have one, maybe look into getting one, or maybe a really good friend, family member. Don't neglect your
don't neglect your emotions.
It I think most of this really are emotional reasons, right?
Oh
Most of
yeah.
them.
And sometimes, like, even if you just have a good supportive system, sometimes though, like, that can be a catalyst to like more problems because they may support you in just maybe standing up for yourself and things like that, which I fully I fully agree with, except like within reason. So, but yeah, the next one, trying to change your partner. This is like,
it's a
that's,
I think it's a lot of people.
yeah.
Or a lot of
Or
us,
like
we
they
should say.
can't. I feel like I get so many clients who are just like, well, why can't he do this, or why can't she be like this, and or like they want to change them so bad, and I think they're not understanding the whole reason they're kind of in this stuff is because they are who they are, and I'm sure they wish they could change things about you and vice versa, but trying to go through the process and hope for that change is not something that you should be doing during your family law matter. Like, it's going to prolong things, and trying to justify why they should be changing and things like that, again,
Yep.
it's only going to increase legal costs and not resolve your matter.
I agree. I agree. The next one is comparing your relationship. Okay, I'm going to change this in our context to comparing your settlement with your neighbor, brother, friend, everybody else.
Oh yeah.
Your matters are different.
Oh, 100%. Like, I'll get like someone who clearly has to be paying like some child support, and then we'll compare with a friend of a friend from work who never paid child support in their separation agreement. And I'm like, well, that's nice.
You
But
don't
if she doesn't agree, like,
you don't know their situation for starters.
like, we're all not, like, it's not a one size fits all. And
Exactly.
again, just like families are not, they're not one and the same. Like, everybody is different. Every legal issue is different, and people are different. So
Exactly. And it goes back to what you were saying about trying to change your ex. Maybe you're thinking, why can't my ex agree to no child support? After all, my buddy didn't have to pay child support and blah blah blah, and all valid reasons, but she's just who she is, and
Exactly.
if they don't agree and that legal obligation exists, I mean, first off, we're going to make sure that you don't give anything more than what you're legally obligated to
yeah,
do.
and where there's like a claim, we're going to be pursuing it. Like,
Yeah.
there's no doubt about that. Like, we do have your best interest at heart, but we also are going to let you know where
We know which fights we
Yeah.
shouldn't get into. And I tell people, I'm a firm believer in giving as little as I have to from a legal perspective. But I believe that if morally you want to give more, feel free to do it.
Yeah.
So if your legal obligation is $1, I don't want to offer $1 more. It almost gives me an ulcer. Now, when you're done signing that agreement or we're done making that order, if you want to gift the entire home, whatever you want to do after the fact, if you want to give $5,000 over and above your child support, go ahead and do that. But if you're going to do that, maybe tell me so I can include it in your agreement,
Yeah.
because I have to add a caveat there, like those, if your generosity could create a legal obligation for you in the future. So I just want to park that there. But having said that, I just, we want you to know that your lawyers, as your lawyers, at least with our firm, we have your back, and we would not, much as we're trying to help you settle and move along and things like that, we got your back. We would pursue any claims that are necessary. We will just kind of follow up on everything that needs to be followed up on. So the last one, refusing to compromise. I mean, that sums it all up.
I feel like that's pretty self-explanatory.
You can
So
imagine.
remember, don't be so inflexible. Like,
Yes.
just understand that you can't be so stringent on one and stubborn on one position.
Yeah, there's
there is compromise, and like, I think the judges say it best: if you're both feeling like you lost something, then it's a good deal.
yeah, judges say that all the time, and that's so true. For some people, I mean, compromising, or I shouldn't say some people, for me as well, I know it's harder to compromise when I'm so right on the law. Like, there's certain things that
there's certain
I
things
would not compromise. Child support is one of them, right? If my client wants child support, it's so straightforward. But even within that child support umbrella, if we're going after retroactive child support, for example, and it's a huge lump sum, I like to do cost benefit analysis, right? Like, yeah, you may spend $10,000 to go make sure we get 20, and maybe just maybe the cost will give us the courts will give us $5,000 in cost. It's going to take us this many years to get there.
And then emotional, like,
Yeah,
toll.
the toll.
So
And
sometimes we may talk about lowering it. Like, we try to find flexible ways which still make you feel good about what you're doing, but at the same time deal with the issue so that you're getting the most efficient and effective resolution
and
possible.
if as a matter of principle some of these things matter to you, we would, even regardless of what we think, we would not compromise on an issue that you say is absolutely important to you. We just want you to be mindful that if that's the case, then don't expect the matter to settle quickly.
Yeah.
Right. So without that compromise, yes, if you're in the right legally, we will tell you, like I said earlier, we would not take you into a fight that we don't expect you can win. But if you tell us, you know what, this means matters the most to me. Like, some people are just absolutely against paying spousal support, even when the obligation exists. And we can tell you several times what it is and all of that. But if from a moral perspective, and please don't do this, would really rather you don't. If you have a legal obligation, we got your back, and if we tell you that's what it is, like, we want you to listen to us. But for some people, they just can't cross. There's just some thresholds that
boundary
that they can't they can't they would rather a judge just tell them, like, that's what they're
and
going
that's
to
fine,
do.
because sometimes, like, I understand that, like, if you need the judge to absolutely tell you you're going to be paying child support, you're going to be paying spousal support, then that's fine, because maybe that gets you to settlement. But if even after hearing that and you still don't want to pay,
I mean, then it will get ordered. Yeah. But I think from the context of this podcast, we're just saying, understand that you're delaying settling your matters. So we think of different creative ways to compromise. And if you're saying that context of the child support, retroactive child support, for example. So if my client's the one to pay, maybe the concern is a payment schedule, for example, right? So if the other side is refusing to compromise, then maybe we can find a way to spread out the payment so it's easier. But we have to be creative. We can't be, I guess, fixated on things. It might have led to your breakup, but at least we hope we can help to settling your matter quicker.
Yeah.
All right. That's the end of that article. We could go on and on. I mean, our job is fun, and we know that we're dealing with people in the most difficult of times, and we take that responsibility very seriously. And that's why we try to put out as much content as we can from time to time to just help you as you deal with your matters. So until we find another interesting topic, we will say goodbye for now.
Bye.
Thanks for listening and joining us in the AP Legal Zone. We hope you enjoyed this episode. You can find more episodes by searching AP Legal Zone on anywhere you watch podcasts. Be sure to subscribe to our podcast today so you can stay connected with any updates and get notified about any new episodes.